Hello, I'm Jeremy Vine, and this is Panorama. This week we're in South America, asking what 2 decades of campaigning to protect the Amazon has achieved.
Saving the rainforest is one of the first great campaigns I remember noticing as a kid.
But buying the t-shirt hasn't stopped the destruction.
It's a big arc of fire just crunching its way northwestward across the Amazon.
The result of the next 15 or 20 years is this. Almost 20% of the Brazilian rainforest has been destroyed.
So can capitalism succeed where activism has failed?
We believe in the investment. We believe capital can do it.
They are the lungs of the planet, contain untold miracle cures, are home to hundreds of unnamed species, and could just be the last thing between us and global warming. And yet the Amazonian rainforests are being chopped down at a mind-boggling rate, even faster this year because of the global demand for food. Still, there is hope, and it's coming from an unexpected quarter.
You'd expect a film about the destruction of the Amazon to start in the rainforest. But not this one. For the first time, the powers of the market are being deployed to save the trees, not chop them down. A generation of emotional appeals to protect the rainforest have fallen on increasingly deaf ears.
Past methods have not engaged the power of money and markets, and that's at the end of the day what is destroying the rainforest. It is the fact that you can make money out of beef or soy or palm oil, but you can't out of the standing forest.
We've already got an example of how this could work. There's a vibrant market in carbon credits, which has grown at an incredible rate and is already generating big money.
5 years ago, the market just didn't exist. Just last year, the total value of emissions credits traded was 28 billion euros.
But that's just the start. The thinking here is that just as offices like this pay for air conditioning and other services, so everyone should pay for what the forests do for the planet.
Think of the forest as utility. It is providing rainfall, it is providing oxygen, it is maintaining biodiversity, and it's conserving carbon. Now, if you want those services, you better start paying.
It's a complicated idea, but the theory that the city could be the salvation of the rainforest made more sense on the ground. Santarém on the River Amazon in Brazil. I met up with the Greenpeace team who monitor illegal logging operations. At Santarém, there's a new port, home to a giant processing plant owned by Cargill, one of the world's largest private companies, who supply products to the major fast food chains and supermarkets. As you fly over what was once rainforest, you can immediately see the impact of such large-scale development.
How many of these soya farms were built after the port and the Cargill plant were built?
All of them. Before the port was built, there were only 1 or 2 farms here for soy. And these guys, they came 1 year earlier than Cargill. And they came already because they knew that Cargill was going to build the port and that the road would be paved. So they came already thinking of it.
And how many farms are there now, roughly?
I don't know, 200, 300, something like that.
What we saw beneath us has already happened repeatedly across huge swathes of the Amazon. Deforestation has recently increased by over 50% as speculators move in and clear land ready for farming. First, loggers fell the prime timber, then everything else is burnt, clearing the land for beef or soya production. Rainforests provide carbon storage, burn the trees, and all of that carbon is released into the atmosphere. So this destruction doesn't just reduce the world's ability to combat climate change, it may also be one of the primary causes of it.
So now there's smoke in every direction you look, and it's deforestation through fires like that that are responsible for 20% of worldwide carbon emissions. That's more than all of the transportation on the entire planet.
But in purely financial terms, while beef and soya prices rocket, the rainforest is worth nothing standing. That's what has to change if the investors and traders in the city are going to take notice of what's happening here.
The scale of the destruction is horrendous enough, but what's really shocking is just the brazenness of the men working here. They're building permanent roads, buildings, huge silos, warehouses. There's just absolutely no fear whatsoever that they're going to get stopped and arrested.
Thousands of fires have ripped through the Amazon's southern frontier. In Brazil, they call it the Arc of Destruction. It stretches from the far east of Brazil to the state of Rondônia in the west. Rondônia has lost nearly half its forest. The process began back in the 70s, when the military government actually paid farmers to break new ground. Since then, Brazilian agriculture has become an economic juggernaut, and the country is fast becoming the world's breadbasket. Last year, Brazil exported $58 billion in farm products. And out here, beyond the reach of the law, that makes land hugely valuable. Farmers that came here and acquired their land legally can't just be told to stop. And if they're forced to turn more of their land over to forest, they'll need to be compensated.
Nós temos país essencialmente agrícola, né? E ONGs internacionais.
We have a country that's essentially agricultural, and international NGOs and also other governments from America and Europe, they're against us producing in these areas.
Nós produzir nessa região, na região amazônica.
But on the other hand, they don't do anything for us to stop. I think they should pay us if they want us to stop.
Every stage of chopping down the forest offers huge profit, beginning with illegal logging. A 200-year-old tree that costs less than $5 to fell can be worth thousands on the open market.
This timber, little purple or roxinha in Portuguese, it's worth $1,500 the cubic meters.
Yeah.
So we have here $4,000 here.
Yeah.
You know.
The people who are supposed to stop the illegal logging and land grabbing are a government environmental agency called IBAMA. We're on the border of Rondônia State, and basically all the illegal timber that comes from here to southern Brazil and then to the rest of the world passes through this point on the road. So the federal police and IBAMA are here checking, they say, 1 in 10 vehicles. At frontier posts like this, IBAMA's work is closely monitored by the federal police because there have been widespread allegations of corruption. Farmers repeatedly told me that IBAMA could be bribed not to search vehicles.
You can see by the tires, it's almost close.
Antonio Torres is one of a new generation of enforcement officers, younger, fresher men who are vowing to change IBAMA's reputation.
A lot of woods here. You can see by the tires, it's almost exploding. It's so much cargo inside here, so probably 500 trees in this cargo, transformed in timber. It's suspicious, very suspicious.
But no matter how hard they try, they are drastically under-resourced. Antonio is part of a team of just 50 men, and they cover a state that is almost 300,000 square kilometres, an area larger than the entire UK. If a truck is caught, only the load is confiscated. The truck is released, and the company pays a very small fine, but keeps its licence, remaining free to carry on exactly as it did before. With the men you have, what do you think the best you can achieve is?
20 trucks a day, that's the most. And you can see, 20 trucks, it's a little sample of the entire movement of the trucks of this road.
So do you think it's enough to make them change their behaviour?
There's not, no, I can't be so naive to think like that.
It's clear from just a few hours here that You know, if the government is serious about stopping deforestation, these guys need a lot more support. With trees worth nothing standing and a small fortune on the back of a lorry, there's no way the rest of the world can expect Brazil to stand against the economic tide. At the Development Ministry in Brasilia, they have priorities beyond simply enforcing the law. Isn't the number one problem implementation? No matter what law is in place, it's just not being applied on the ground. Farmers say that the law is virtually invisible, and if they do get caught, they can bribe their way out of trouble.
Well, the Brazilian state has traditionally been very little present in the Amazon. And now the solution to the problems of the Amazon requires an intensive presence of the state.
When the world expects or demands that you protect the rainforest, do you think they should be more willing to help in some way?
The world often fails to understand that the Amazon is not simply a collection of trees. It is a group of people. More than 25 million Brazilians live and work in the Amazon. It's almost 60% of our national territory. If those 25 million Brazilians lack economic alternatives that are compatible with the preservation of the rainforest, they will be inexorably driven to deforestation.
The Brazilian government has imposed some of the toughest environmental laws in the world, but their limitations are obvious. In the state of Mato Grosso, the scene of appalling levels of land clearance, there are over 20,000 fires a year, most of them set deliberately by land grabbers and loggers. But it's also home to a man who says that farming and conservation don't have to be at loggerheads.
Oh, look at the flames up there, top of the hill.
John Carter is a Gulf War veteran, married to a Brazilian. Now he battles to bring market-based sustainable development to the agricultural heartland of the Amazon. But only if he can stop his trees from going up in flames. So could the fire come across the lake here?
Yeah, one whirlwind or a real strong gust could throw sparks across and start fire over here.
And then, what, your land here, your cattle, your home is in danger?
Yeah, well, we run that risk every single year. But last year we lost everything. Every inch of our property burned. We lost around $400,000 worth of assets and cattle and pasture and fences, and not to include the forest that was totally destroyed and all the carbon that was thrown in the atmosphere.
When he arrived from America 12 years ago, John was staggered by the sheer scale of devastation. Like me, he'd grown up with campaigns to protect the forest and assumed that the NGOs were really getting the job done.
I had a tremendous letdown because I thought they were doing a whole lot more than they actually were doing. I thought that from all the rhetoric you hear in the media, etc., that there was being a real huge impact on conservation, and I came here and saw that it was absolutely the contrary, and that for the most part, it's like combat commanders on the ground versus the people in the Pentagon. There's a big disparity between what decisions are made elsewhere to try to make things happen on the ground in the frontier region.
Fed up with waiting for campaigners or government action, John decided to go it alone. In 2004, he formed the Land Alliance, a group of farmers committed to reform. So how long does it take to grow back once it's been burnt like this? Or does it grow back?
No, it'll grow back. Yeah, it'll grow back.
Now they control 166 properties in this region alone, 1.6 million hectares of land that he hopes will soon attract income for the rainforest they promised to preserve.
If you think about it, if you give an economic value to this stuff, all of a sudden the whole Amazon, everybody wants to save it. They want to protect it from fire, they want to protect it from invasion, and there's a reason for the government to come in because there's taxes on top of it.
One idea is to get companies to pay farmers to preserve enough forest to offset their emissions and make themselves carbon neutral. John's managed to attract voluntary money from Rabobank, a Dutch agricultural bank.
Rabobank approached us and said they wanted to offset their carbon footprint for their entire bank to create this model whereby Rabobank pays landowners like myself to reforest on a per hectare basis, and then we contractually give them the future carbon credits on that exact specific area, this georeference with GPS.
Although critics say that carbon offsetting is far from perfect, it does provide a working model for placing real value on standing forest.
It's in a stage of regeneration. It's sequestering on average 20 tons of carbon a year at an average value of between $10 to $30, let's say 20 bucks a ton. That's $400 per hectare that I could be receiving as an annual payment.
How does $400 a hectare compare to what you could make if that was for soybean or cattle?
It's easily 3 times more than I could make with beef. And it's twice what I can make with soybeans. So it's huge. It's a huge number.
And it's the first time I'd seen anyone on the ground who could make more money from letting the forest grow than from chopping it down.
I mean, it shows that if you can get the capital markets involved in this, then you know there's a huge potential, because they're always looking for opportunity, and now they're starting to look at this as opportunity.
And it's not just carbon capture that the market is interested in. 900 miles from Mato Grosso, deep in the virgin jungle north of Manaus, there's a research project investigating the other services the forest provides.
So how high is this one?
This is 51 meters high. Climb the tree now.
It's estimated that the Amazon holds between 60 and 90 billion tons of carbon, helping to combat climate change. Scientists from Brazil's IPNA Institute are getting precise figures for these and other services so they can be given a monetary value.
Wow.
The white sensor is measuring the concentrations of CO2 and water vapor in the air. And we get the final number as a flux. How much carbon dioxide at this time of the day is being absorbed by the forest. Or at night, how much is being released by the forest. As well for water vapor.
The full range of the services that the Amazon provides to the rest of the world is only just being fully realised.
Just broadly, what services do the rainforest provide now?
It's providing water to the atmosphere. The amount of water that enters the Amazon basin through the trade winds doesn't drop while this air is flowing over the Amazon. This is all because of forest is recycling the water. It's providing shelter, it's providing cooling of this system in a sense, and it's still be to prove it, but some researchers are showing that if there is a decrease of forest vegetation in Amazon, there will be a reduction in rainfall.
Water is carried across the Atlantic on the trade winds and falls as rain on the Amazon region. Instead of flowing out to sea in the river, it's captured and then released into the atmosphere by the Amazonian forest. These little puffs of vapour launch 20 billion tonnes of water into the atmosphere every day, providing rain for the rest of Latin America and even the USA. If there's no rainforest, farms in these countries get no rain. For the first time, I understood not just the value of the services the forests provide, but also who would be willing to pay for their preservation.
We are serving to give a number, to quantify how much is it, to understand how it works. So once we can understand that, then we can say, look, this is the number we have, this is what's controlling those things.
When you've got a figure on the services that the rainforest provides, how would you like to see the money coming in so that it's more attractive to keep the rainforest than to chop it down?
I wish I could deliver a bill, an invoice to any big company and say, look, this is the amount of money you have to deliver to the Amazon citizens who are living and keeping the forest alive.
Well, there can't be any doubt that the services provided by this rainforest are immensely valuable. The trick is convincing enough people that the market value of those services is greater, far greater than the market value of beef, timber or soybeans.
And that's where the money men come in. They think they've worked out how to combine environmental altruism with cold hard capitalism.
Is this environmentalism or investment?
It is definitely investment, absolutely. We are only going to turn this ship around if we manage to make money for investors out of the forest.
Isn't this just a junk bond?
It depends what you mean by junk, but no. I mean, think of the forest, take away the romance of it. Forget about the indigenous people, the birds and the bees and the butterflies and whatever for a moment, yeah? Think of it like a utility. And just like a utility here, British Gas or Thames Water, wherever it is, if you don't pay your bill, eventually you'll get cut off. And that's what's really exciting. When you realize what the forests do for humanity, these services that are there being provided so far free of charge every day, you start wanting to begin to pay for them.
They've bought the rights to nearly 400,000 hectares of rainforest. They plan to be ahead of the game in profiting from ecosystem services.
Think of it this way. If you had bought the rights to car parking in 1950 in West London, and you had agreed to pay Hammersmith Council £1 per slot, for 100 years. For the first 10 years of that investment, everybody would be laughing at you. They'd think you were completely crazy, because there was no car parking restrictions in Hammersmith in 1950. But think of it now. Something that was inconceivable then is commonplace now. I mean, we all pay £100 a slot, or whatever it is, So if you had those rights, you would be now sitting pretty.
Canopy Capital's investment is in Guyana, a tiny country on Brazil's northern border. I went there to see if the deal is as good on the ground as it sounds in the boardroom.
That's it, that's where we're staying?
The Iroquois Reserve is 370,000 hectares of virgin rainforest, a tiny proportion of the 21 million hectares of untouched forest in Guyana. Canopy Capital plan to raise a $100 million bond that will profit from any future increase in value of the services the rainforest provides.
Canopy Capital is an attempt to evaluate these resources using the Iroquois forest as a testbed, to try to develop a market for it, to look at stocking levels, to look at identifying the services, to put values to these services, and finally to develop a commercial market for these services.
People will understand the service that the rainforest provides, but how do you put a value on that? How do you actually sell that service? Because it's here for everyone.
Yeah. I think it has to be market driven to an extent. Its ability to pay. I liken it to a junk bond or an IPO. There's the promise of large payments. There's also a chance of failure. But that's what Iroquois is about. Innovation, test bedding, trying out.
It's a risky idea, but the hope is that when there is a market for ecosystem services, countries, companies or investors will be willing to pay the Iroquois Reserve for the rain it provides or the carbon it captures.
As an investor, let's say I've got $10 million to spend.
Right.
Why should I invest in this thinking there's going to be some kind of financial, material return?
We're saying, guys, look, you know what's happening, what you're contributing to. Here's a chance to invest and still get something back, potentially. So instead of actually being a guilt payment or a moral payment, it actually is an investment.
You're actually saying now that you think capitalism can save the rainforest?
I think capitalism, properly managed and properly directed and properly structured, could do it. For too long, the international community, the green movements have relied a lot on donor money. We believe in the investment. We believe capital can do it.
I can see how the idea works on a small, relatively small reserve like this. But if it's going to have any chance of stopping deforestation worldwide, it needs to be rolled out over entire countries and areas of rainforest that are under much more pressure than the Iroquois.
Someone who needs the idea to work is Guyana's president, Bharat Jagdeo. He's keen to save his rainforest, but his country is poor, and he can't keep logging or traditional development projects at bay forever. But Guyana's capital city, Georgetown, is 13 feet below sea level and has already suffered floods and coastal erosion caused by climate change. There are no incentives, even under the Kyoto Protocol, for countries like this which have standing forests that can be preserved. Jagdeo could attract funds by chopping down his trees, then replanting them, but right now he gets no support whatsoever.
I've seen what has happened in Europe. In 2 years, emission trading scheme in Europe has gone from basically zero to $33 billion in trading carbon credits. I think a similar mechanism could be employed in countries like ours. Countries like ours that have rainforests may be able to, through a trading mechanism, achieve a particular level of financial flow back to our countries.
For Guyana, a country with a GDP of just $1.1 billion, a relatively small contribution from the rest of the world could have a huge impact. President Jack Deo tried to move things forward by offering Tony Blair and then Gordon Brown the use of his country's entire standing forest in exchange for development aid and assistance.
I'm prepared to deploy our entire rainforest, which is the size of England, and have it supervised by an international consortium, of course without trading sovereignty over the forest. So if the right incentives are found, we can deploy our total rainforest, not a part of it, but the whole rainforest in service of the international community.
But this offer's been on the table for almost 2 years.
For a while, yes. Let me say I'd hope for a more aggressive response from the British government.
So far, President Jack Deo has had no response to his offer.
Yeah, but me, I never heard about the donkey fish. How you, all right?
And just as in Brazil, it's clear that here traditional methods have failed to protect the forests. And surprisingly, for a Soviet-trained economist, he believes that the free market is the only way forward.
Do you think enough of the capitalist world has or will come round to the same point of view that you've now reached?
I hope so. Governments need to commit to emission targets and then use market-based mechanisms to achieve the cheapest way of achieving those targets.
The models are there, and if the people I've met turn out to be right, the market can pay for them. But sovereign states like Brazil can't be told what to do with their land.
It would be good for the world to help pay for programs that benefit the whole of humanity, but that we must design and undertake. But our first task is to get our own act together, to know what we want, to develop our own program.
And Brazilian farmers are clearly willing to preserve the rainforest if it can be made to pay.
What we need to do is redirect our emphasis to try to help Brazil come up with economic solutions to make the job a lot more easier to keep this forest standing. If you put a value on the stuff, then everybody wants to keep it standing.
But although these ideas are supposed to come from the cold, hard logic of business, the environmental clock is ticking.
As atmospheric levels of carbon dioxide go above 400 parts per million, and the trend is accelerating away from us, as those numbers increase, the relative value of forests to humanity goes up. So I think that the moment for forests is just about to come.
Who knows what could be achieved if the zeal applied to filling green bins and unplugging phone chargers over here was applied to forgotten corners of the world in Brazil and Guyana.
Ben Anderson reporting there, and we understand the government will respond to the President of Guyana's offer this autumn after it's considered a report on capitalism and the rainforest, which is being written by the businessman Johan Eliash. Next week, it's 10 years since terrorists bombed Omar, but still no one is in prison. Panorama reveals the secret intelligence which could have put some of the bombers behind bars.
The UCAS team find themselves at the centre of a political minefield. Next here on BBC One, it's New Tricks. And before they close for business, the Dragons consider investing in a chef on a mission to help the homeless. That's over on BBC Two.